Scotland. We're a proud nation with strong and rich heritage. Many of us like to believe we are an open society, one who stands up for injustice and fights for the voices of the voiceless. A lot of us are community people, standing up for what we believe is right and tackling hate and different forms of abuse on a daily basis. Many of us are sadly under the illusion, though, that everyone in Scotland is open to all and will welcome people from all walks of life to our small, proud country. This, however, is far from the cruel reality. Scotland has a terrible curse, and we're not the only country stricken by it. It's a worldwide issue that still needs to be addressed. This curse is racism. Racism has no bounds. It can be found in any context. People are harassed walking down the street. Some receive dirty looks from passing by strangers, and others are physically abused. Racism has taken a new form in recent years, and it's growing rapidly within society. People are now being abused without being face to face with their abuser. Social media has given people the access to do this. Anyone from celebrities to the average person can be targeted through platforms such as Twitter and Facebook with very little repercussion to the abuser. And unfortunately, it's found its way into football in recent years. It's not as if racism has only just become an issue within Scottish football. It has always been lingering and growing in the community. One man who was recognised as one of the first people to experience it within the game in this country was Rangers player Mark Walters. He was targeted by a section of Celtic support with bananas during Old Firm in the late 80s, and it became a regular occurrence. However, back then, while it was frowned upon by many, it was not seen as a societal problem and was just perceived as a few bad apples. Now, as cases continue to be reported each week, it's clear to see that there is an issue within society and something needs to be done. And majority of these reported cases have been found over social media. This documentary focuses on the role that social media has played in the growth of racism in Scottish football in recent years and why these huge companies are complicit in these incidents, as the issue continues to be the highest form of hateful abuse found in the UK. One man who is extremely knowledgeable in the issue in football in this country is former Hibs, Dundee United and Inverness midfielder and current assistant manager at Hamilton Accies, John Rankin. Rankin also held the position of PFA Players Chairman back in his final years in his playing career. The Accies coach insists while racism is very prominent in today's game, it has always been an issue in this country, and his first recollection of it was the horrible incidents involving Rangers player Mark Walters. He also admits that social media is playing a part in the incidents we see in today's game.
No so much recent years as in the last 5 or 6. I think it's been prominent in football for longer than that. I'd say probably when you go back, I think my first understanding of racism in Scottish football was probably Mark Walters. What year would that have been? About 88, 89, so I haven't been about 5 or 6 at the time. I don't think it's ever kind of went away since then. There's always been obviously sly remarks in the crowd or noise from certain areas which you would look at and go, it's never really been removed as such, which is sad. I think the way society is these days, it pops up more, whether it be on social media or other platforms that people decide that they seem to be able to say what they want. So I don't think it's ever disappeared. So it's probably been there for 30 years now. It just becomes a case of how we can eradicate it and when.
Rankin believes the reason for so many reported incidents in football compared to other sports is due to the intense speed of the game and the fiery and competitive nature among supporters and those in the pitch. He also admits that many incidents will go under the radar and won't be investigated due to the lack of proof. However, he says it's easy to tell who's right and who's wrong due to the reactions of the individuals.
The only other sport that I compare football to would be rugby, where there's passion and lots of endeavour, and sometimes there's high tempo, but for me football's more high tempo than what rugby is, and there's a lot of time to probably digest what's going on, whereas in football it seems more reactive and more emotional. So I'd say probably people speak out of turn or listen, I'm just liking it to the crowd, or use remarks from the crowd or say things in the heat of the moment which isn't merited, and I think that comes up just because of the emotional tie. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not giving that as an excuse. I'm just saying that could be the reason why, because things are sparked and happening at the moment, and where that source comes from, I don't really know. I'm unaware of, but you can see these things happening where maybe, I don't know, you look back at the Rangers game when Glenn Kamara was at the source of it, and you can see it, the reaction of the player that night told something had happened. I don't think I've ever been in a pitch or been in anything anywhere where I've seen that sort of reaction from a player and you could go, oh, wait a minute, that's happened. And I can only liken that to the time when, and it's completely different circumstances, but it becomes a case of, I can liken it slightly, where we played Dundee in a Dundee derby when I was at United at the last game of the season, it maybe been 2014-15 season, and Nadir Chifchi bit Jim McAllister in the calf. Now, I seen that happen. I was right in front of that as it happened. But the player's reaction at that time told a story of what was going on and how people had reacted and what had actually happened. Now, Jim's reaction first and foremost, but the players round about who also seen it. Now, anytime I see anything in the telly, I can use that experience to relate to, did something happen there, or is somebody trying to stir up trouble? Now, I'm not saying that, but that's the kind of world we're in now. You can, it's one guy's word against another's. But at that scenario, I seen it happen, other than D players seen it happen. And obviously Jim knew it had happened. So that's the only kind of way I can, and I think you need to look at sometimes the player's reaction to go, right, okay, something's definitely happened there.
I also caught up with Jordan Allison, the campaign manager for Show Racism the Red Card, and he agrees with Rankin and says that the issue is a problem throughout the whole of Scotland, but insists it's happening too frequently in football in this country.
Even though we're an education charity first and foremost, our relationship with Scottish footballers and Scottish football clubs means that we have an active campaign that helps to raise awareness of the issues of racism in Scottish football and in Scottish society as well. Racism in Scotland is the highest form of reported hate crime in Scotland at the moment. It has been for a number of years and continues to be, sadly, racial hate crime. So football being a kind of microcosm for society, it manifests itself in Scottish football, sadly. Even this season, you know, we were at a stage where we're recording incidents that either come through, you know, via the media or via inquiries through our website and things, and it's every weekend this season. It feels like every single weekend we're recording a new incident, and that's up and down the levels of Scottish football from the Premiership all the way down to, you know, the Highland League, Lowland League, lower leagues, and youth football, sadly, as well. And social media plays a huge part in that as well, because we have players, we have ambassadors in Scottish football that tell us that, you know, they come off of a performance, maybe against a high-profile team, maybe against one of the Old Firm, for example, and they almost expect to receive racist messages on their social media platforms. And this season, we've seen a lot of, in the past year, we've seen a number of campaigns that are trying to lobby these giant social media companies to just put simple protections in for Black, Asian and ethnic minority people to feel safe online. But sadly, that while they kind of monetize, while these companies will monetize these really powerful role models, they won't protect these role models. So we're seeing it at, like I said, we're seeing it at all levels of the game, from the kind of the lower leagues all the way through to, you saw what happened to the three England players after they missed those penalties at the Euro. So that experience that Black players have, they also experience that in Scotland. It's that Scotland is not immune from racism, like sadly some people in power will say. The experience of Black players tells us a different story, and we work with those same players to help educate the future generation of the impact that racism can have on people's lives. It can drive people out of the game. It can lead to serious mental health issues. One of our most outspoken and kind of strongest ambassadors, Marvin Bartley, has said on record that he expects or he fears that one day a Black player will take their own life because of racism, and he's experienced it over social media. And we sadly have an entire network of Black players in Scotland that continue to almost every week experience racism because social media allows it to manifest itself on there.
The question must be asked then, what needs to happen for social media companies to take action and put protection in for players? Because as Jordan said, it's happening almost every week and players just expect to receive racist messages now. Another person who feels strongly about the issue is Jamie Harking, who is a social media journalist for the Scottish Sun, and he also insists that the sheer number of racist comments he has seen online since working for the tabloid is awful and something needs to change.
Absolutely. As someone who works in it, I see it all the time. It's disgusting. There is certainly, I mean, I've been working in this field for a year or so, particularly in tabloid, and the amount that I've seen just in comments back to articles, or people just replying to footballers, it's horrible. There's lots and lots of it. I do think there's a real problem, and people like to say, oh, we're doing enough, we've got show racism, the red card, but it's not. There's still a culture of intolerance and otherism. They really, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the football community about their racist actions.
One issue involving social media and issues such as racism is the opportunity for people to go online and say what they want to whoever they please with no repercussions. The reason people can do this is because of the access of anonymous accounts. Rankin believes these should be abolished for the safety and well-being of footballers, celebrities and anyone for that matter.
Aye, social media plays a big part. There has to be some sort of social media passport where you can't hide behind a picture of someone else or a blank profile or something where you are not responsible for your comments. Now, lots of people throw these comments out there to grab attention because they want attention for themselves and to grab headlines or look cool amongst their pals, or even gain followers, as sad as that may seem. But the way it is just these days, people do things for likes on Instagram, or they do things for retweets in Twitter. I don't know what it is in Facebook. I'm not really social media friendly, but it becomes a case of how can we eradicate that? Because no human being, never mind a footballer, deserves to be on the opposite side of that abuse, especially for only doing their work to the best of their ability. Now, that could actually be one of their supporters, or it could be one of the opponent supporters. That could be one of their supporters that's thrown that racial abuse because they don't, in their eyes, they haven't performed well enough on that given day. That's no excuse. That shouldn't be the case. But I think because football players are in the public eye, and these, guys, women, whoever it may be, are looking for that minute of, I'm going to put this out here because I'm going to be the big I am. And it's not the way to go about it at all. There's no place for it in sport at all. Never mind life. There's no place for racism in life, and I don't see why, because they hide behind a picture or a profile, whatever it may be, where they can think they can say what they want and abuse people.
So would you say then, in the case of maybe anonymous accounts then, where people are hiding behind false profiles, you think that should be abolished in some shape or form?
Yes, I think that massively. I think there has to be something where you can abolish fake profiles obviously, but profiles where you don't have to be held accountable, where you don't have to, there must be some sort of identity where everyone knows who it is that's behind a certain thing.
Harkin has another view, however, and says that anonymous accounts should be allowed so people can speak about particular issues, but agrees there should be more policing of these profiles.
I'm a bit mixed on it, to be honest. There's people who can't speak out apart from anonymously. So obviously the right of anonymity gives them the ability to speak out about issues that they would say, or have, gives them the ability to speak about issues that they wouldn't necessarily have the chance to otherwise, like whistleblowers, stuff like that. But also it does just allow people to be absolutely vile. There's no repercussions to anonymity. And Twitter specifically is bad for it. Facebook, now it's a lot more difficult it has got, overall it's gotten better over the years. I remember 10 years ago, and it was a bit like the Wild West, anyone could make a fake account, and, there was all these fake accounts, and they were all posting horrible stuff, and it was out of control. And Facebook put a real clamp down, especially on like anonymous accounts. You don't really see anywhere near as many of them as you used to. Twitter also has its quality filter, which is making it a lot more difficult for these accounts to be seen. And there is, some AI kind of tracking going on to try and put a clamp down on these, but I still don't think it's enough.
While Facebook have been adapting and trying to block out racist and hateful messages, should they still be doing more? And what about other social media companies? Should more funding go into the safety and privacy of these sites rather than the quality and marketing of them?
Twitter is a multi-billion-pound company, and through advertising, these companies are making money from the high-profile status of footballers. Whenever there's an international tournament, for example, or even just every week through the advertising of footballs, whether it's betting companies, whether it's sponsors of big football clubs, they're monetizing the players, because the players are contributing to click-throughs, to sign-ups, and they're generating ad revenue from these players. But so they rely, the social media companies like Twitter rely on these players, but they will not put the simple measures in place to protect those same players from racism that's being almost facilitated by those companies. So it is far too easy to create an anonymous account on Twitter and tag a player in and racially abuse them. It's far too easy to get away with it. We've seen countless anonymous accounts do that. We've even seen instances where the accounts have been identified by the police, and it's went to it's maybe for the small amount of cases that actually do go to court, it's went to court, and then sometimes it's even dismissed then, because for whatever reason it isn't currently seen as strong or as serious a crime as it should be, because people need to understand the impact that racism can have on mental health and on a player, or even just an individual. You talked about just ordinary people as well, on anyone's ability to just go about their daily lives without having to think about the colour of their skin or their religion or their nationality. But sadly, as it stands, social media enables that type of language, those types of slurs, those types of attacks on people. And without the protections, it's only going to get worse. So, charities like Show Racism the Red Card and campaign groups are working with players to have these productive meetings with social media companies and ask them what they're doing to protect players, what they're doing to protect individuals, and what can we do along with governments to make sure that that's not something that anyone can do. They can't just sign up an anonymous account and target players in that way.
While questions have been asked of the social media companies themselves, I wanted to know if there was anything the general public can do, and footballers also. So,
there's no many footballers well educated, is there? That's the first and foremost. So, could footballers do more? I think everybody could do more, not just footballers. And footballers seem to be highlighted for a hell of a lot of things. And could they do more? I think society as a whole, as they take a grip of it, I think footballers can help because they can highlight things and it's more media friendly, where people will look at games and maybe a footballer tweeting things. Of course they can help. I think, like you could say, PFA in England, PFA Scotland, are they doing enough? I don't think anybody's ever doing enough when it comes to racism. There can always be more done. But I don't think, as I say, to go back to my original point, I don't think having footballers not being highly educated, I think they're almost scared to say something on their own about racism because they don't know where it can take them to, or if they're, I don't mean if they're going to get in any trouble, but a bit of abuse coming opposite way. Because I mean, I've seen footballers in the past, again, liking it to something else where they put their neck in the line when it became Scottish independence. I think that was 2014, and players were saying, "Oh, I vote for independence." And the players are taking abuse. because they're getting involved in politics. So I know it's something completely different. Racism and politics are two completely different things, but if a player puts its head up and says, listen, X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be, then they're going to take abuse in some sort, no matter what way they're going. So I think they need to be educated and maybe helped with regards to what to say, or if you don't mind putting something out, could you say this or could you say that? Each player to their own. Some will do it and some won't. But I think there is no place for racism, and all players will tell you that, because they'll all be teammates of someone of a different race, and they'll all have shared the dressing room with a teammate of a different race, and more so they'll have shared special moments in the pitch with someone of a different race. So they'll all be able to relate to it in some way, and it's how, as I said before, how players can help, whether it be pointing people in the right direction or follow me, whatever it may be. But I think more has to be done. And whether that be, as I said, players can help, but footballers do a lot and take responsibility for a lot of things. And I think sometimes other people need to help them along the way to promote things or lead the way. Just in general.
Yeah, it's the responsibility of everyone to do what they can to first of all highlight the issues, because we need more people to speak out about it, and we need more allies to kind of gather around those people that are speaking out about racism and social media. And once we've raised that awareness, we need to send the strongest possible message to these social media companies. We tried the boycott, I think back in 2021 or 2020 it was, and just with the amount of money these companies make, it didn't even, it wouldn't make a dent in their revenues. So we need to send an even stronger message, and that if that's, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people coming off of social media for a prolonged period of time. We know players that have deleted their accounts. They don't want anything to do with it because of the racism that they're receiving, and that's not good enough for companies that size to lead to players and individuals coming off of social media because they don't feel safe, because they don't feel like their mental health can take being on that platform. At the other end of the spectrum, we speak to young people who are learning about racist slurs from online, from gaming as well. That's where they're first experiencing racist slurs, and particularly BME young people who, these slurs can be extremely damaging and traumatizing for them, and they're seeing them open air on social media. So there's so much more that social media companies need to do, even Facebook. But it's up to campaign groups and charities and government to get around the table and explain to these social media companies that enough is enough. We can't continue like this in 2022.
In a way, it's almost better not to engage with it. But, if it's vile racism being directed at you, how can you not? It's calling it out is just as important as well. So it might sound contradictory here. Like, there's the kind of casual stuff that, with a lot of, especially in Scotland, sectarianist stuff, that should, they should be pretty much just letting that go and, blanket, do not engage with that stuff. But when it comes to, slurs, stuff being thrown about, that, needs to be outed, and these people need to be kind of put on a pedestal. They need to be put in under the spotlight, so they can feel the consequences of their action.
Social media companies should be accountable for the incidents that happen on their platforms. It's clear with the multi-billion funding and profit these companies receive, they are only putting a small fraction back into the protection of these footballers who have been hounded with abuse online. It is their responsibility to stand up and take the blame for anything and anyone suffered online, even if they are not directly involved. They have allowed the opportunity for it to happen and haven't bothered to make a change and prevent incidents like these mentioned. But finally, I wanted to hear what we have in store for us in the future and what Jordan and Jamie believe the next few years will be like, and if we will see a change in racism online.
Absolutely. I think it's going to get stricter and stricter. Even look at the way that Facebook is policing content now, not just posts. They deprioritize hard news stuff. If anything is shown to have kind of negative impacts on someone, they will actively make it harder for people to see that. They would rather share kind of, life hack content or, tips or celebrity stuff. Even when it comes to football, even then, it's a lot more difficult. Like they tend to steer away from the hard news football stories. I think that they'll continue to clamp down more. I think it'll become more difficult to make fake accounts, especially with stuff like the Meta coming in. And I think it's going to become a more difficult situation for people to be anonymous and get away with spewing that. I hope, anyway.
To point out, we've been a charity for 25 years, and throughout it, education has been the absolute priority. So now that we're at 25 years, I know in Scotland we've got really big plans, certainly for this year. We've got a group, we'll get groups organised across the country, actually called, that we're calling Captains. That's going to be launched pretty soon, and that is young people from primary school to the upper end of secondary school that are going to be critiquing and basically advising the Scottish Government on curricular reform to embed anti-racism and race equality across the curriculum. So young people that we've worked with throughout those 25 years, we've gathered data to highlight the experiences of racism in schools, and obviously we're working in those schools using Scottish football as a way to kind of engage these young people and get them talking about what they're experiencing. And sadly, racism is a huge problem in Scottish education. But this year, we're looking to we're looking to get these groups together of young people that are in schools right now and use their voices, and they'll be able to use their voices to challenge the Scottish Government and actually say, look, this is our experiences of racism in schools. This is what needs to change. So we're literally going to have young people potentially use their voices to embed anti-racism on the curriculum. That will be a kind of first of its kind. I know in Wales, they've set their targets to have an anti-racist nation by 2030. And we want to see that even sooner in Scotland. And we think that having young people's voices, particularly young ethnic minority young people's voices, at the heart of the table, at the heart of those discussions, and their experiences of racism being heard, we think that's the way forward for our kind of curricular reform in Scotland. And if we have an anti-racist curriculum, if we have race equality embedded across classrooms across the country, if we have it in teacher training, then hopefully we can start to see a significant decrease in racist incidents in schools. And then that's our future generation we're talking about. So that's the future generation of our footballers, of our everyone in society, of our maybe CEOs of social media companies, and they'll be aware, cognizant of the impact that racism has and how we need to eradicate it from our society. So yeah, that's hopefully how 2022 is going to look like for Scotland, and obviously we want England and Wales to follow suit.